Okay, as in go? Sorry, 1 second.
Forktales, a podcast that feeds the food and beverage world.
Oh, awesome. Forktales is brought to you by Vigor, a branding and marketing agency for passion-driven, innovative restaurant, beverage, and hospitality brands. Learn more at vigorbranding.com. If you love what we're serving up, please give Forktales a 5-star review on your podcast service of choice. Think of it as a tip for good service.
Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Greg Golkin. He's managing partner of Kichen Fund, who has brands like Curry Up Now, Sweet Green, Gregory's Coffee, and one of our favorites, eegee's. Greg, welcome to the show. Why don't you say hello and give a little bit of backstory?
Hey Joseph, good to be here. My name is Greg Golkin. I'm the managing partner of Kichen Fund. We're a growth equity investor in the restaurant space. So long and short is we're vertically specialized investors trying to help growth restaurants through the various cycles of kind of their evolution.
Nice. So Kichen Fund has, many people have already heard of Kichen Fund and they know of you as well, especially because of that Sweet Green and the Curry Up Nows of the world. You have some fantastic brands in the portfolio. How have you personally and as a company, how have you identified opportunities that are right for Kichen Fund? What's that look like?
Yeah, so it's a tough question. That's what we spend all of our day thinking about. But I'll skip the financial because that's a whole nother conversation probably. But when we look at a concept, I think the main things we're looking for are an authenticity. So I think that's something that is really hard to kind of define, but you know it when you see it. We have enough restaurants in this world. We believe it. The pie continues to get bigger, but you need to have a reason as a brand to exist. We don't need another kind of plain, burger concept that can't explain why it's different than the thousands before it. And so, especially if you're trying to grow, so the authenticity and passion behind a brand is kind of the first thing we look for, and it's also the reason why we don't ever get into opening restaurants ourselves. We invest behind entrepreneurs who have a vision and have a passion and a DNA that kind of emanates through their company. And so that's first and foremost. And how do we look for that? I think the key is customers vote with their wallets. And so you can see it pretty early on, kind of where the maniacal customer bases are. So, obviously with Sweet Green was not the first salad business by any stretch of the imagination. There were many before it, but you could see through their numbers, through the NPS scores, through the reviews online, that people were viewing Sweet Green differently, and there was something that was really connecting between the guest and the brand. Same thing if we look at we're involved with a brand called By Chloe. They lines around the block, from the first store, and you say, okay, that there's something different going on here that we really need to focus on.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned NPS. Is there a lot of value put in that those metrics from your point of view?
I think yes. I think the answer is yes. We would like those metrics to continue to evolve, and I think kind of the analytics around brand and kind of customer journey through lifetime, can look at it different ways. Customer journey throughout the life in association with the brand, or the lifetime value of a customer. I think all of those data analytics are really evolving right now. And NPS is kind of, I would say, stage one of understanding an affiliation to a brand. But it makes a difference. I think you can really, with something like food, I feel like it's very valuable. I don't know how it's always funny. We always joke about when people are trying to get NPS scores for like Microsoft Windows or something, or like something like that. And I don't know if that's as valuable. But food is something that we all want to talk about. And we want to promote to each other, and so we do find value in that that data.
That's great. What other metrics are you looking at? I mean, do you take, maybe this is a loaded question. Do you put value in, let's say, Yelp scores and Yelp reviews and Google reviews and things like that?
I'd say that I think it's a threshold item for us. You can kind of tell if a brand is really, kind of in that category of sort of loved. I think differentiating between, the 80th percentile and the 100th is very difficult. But I think you can find out if people really don't like a brand. That shows up in your Yelp scores and your Google reviews. But then they tend to, they all tend to bunch together after that. Often with Yelp and Google reviews, obviously a lot of times you're getting the most negative feedback, not the positive. So, I think we look at it. But I think one of the pieces of data that we like the most is, and this is more when we're in the kind of the diligence process of a brand, is the loyalty. And so how many times is a customer coming back? Because, there's kind of on a marketing side, you get trial. And then, if you look at the customer journey for any brand, generally speaking, it looks like this. You've got a customer and they slowly degrade over time. Like it just, you've got 100 customers and 40 never come back. And that's most brands. And then the question is, how fast is that slope and how do you reactivate and how do you, kind of keep that slope as flat as possible in terms of the guests. I think that tells us a lot about what customers think about it. And you can find out kind of, there's a lot of data to explore there. One is just obviously the retention, as mentioned, but then also how much are they exploring the menu, right? Are they coming back for one item? Are they coming back for 5 different items and they kind of rotate? And you can learn a lot about the guest and about the brand experience through that data.
Yeah, it seems a lot of leaders in the restaurant industry, they don't realize that seeding guests with new flavors, new options, even if they don't come back and buy it, is a great way of getting people to pay attention again.
Totally. It's like reactivation is critical. Where because it's very natural for anybody. We get bored. Like you look at the same 10 menu items, and you're going to get bored over time, even if you love that item. And reactivation is kind of a key skill of any brand at this point. And and then you layer on top, do you have the technology to do it, right? Do you have that relationship with your guest? Have you created, and a lot of brands are doing this with, using a specific, using their own app, somehow gaining the email of their guest, sending push notifications, whatever it is. That communication is key for the reactivation, and it's going to get better and better over time. And that's where a lot of brands are playing with seasonals and LTOs and pushing you products that they know you're interested in. Right. Like Greg goes and buys a peach burrata salad. When they introduce another salad with burrata, they should email me about that. That might reactivate me to come back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the technology, I mean, for the most part, is there. You just need to dig into it. I think that's one thing that I see. You have a lot of leaders right now in the restaurant industry that are almost, thirst trapping for data, but then they get it and then they're like, I don't know what to do with this.
Totally.
It's really tough.
I mean, I think there's 2 problems. One of which is there's just so much data that if you wanted to play with it all, it's just overwhelming. And 2, I think a lot of the technology is still evolving to make it actionable, right? Like I think that this kind of from a software perspective on, for SaaS companies, that data, you're not just getting raw data anymore. There's a lot of ad tech companies that have built up around the space that kind of explain what to do with the data and make it kind of enable kind of like automated marketing that doesn't exist really in the restaurant world yet. Like we're still trying to figure it out because the problem is that it's a multi-channel business, and that creates a challenge right there. So I mean, I mean, you've seen the data from our friends at eegee's. Is you've got people coming into the store with cash, you've got people coming into the store with credit card, you've got people ordering ahead, you've got people delivery, you got people in drive-through, and to track kind of the guest across all of this is very difficult.
Yeah, extremely difficult, because the type of person that comes through a drive-through, isn't really going to be a frequenter of going in the front door. That's just it's a completely different behavior for them.
Right. But even if they did, I mean, they could, if they went in once every 5 times, you as us as the operator don't know that we've just lost a chunk of their behavior, and it's really important in communicating with your guests to really have it. If you lose 20 to 40% of their transactions in your data, or you can't tie them together, how can you communicate effectively?
Yeah. And I think that's the code that has to get cracked in a way that I think is approachable and cost. Like right now, data crunching and all that interlinking, it's a big investment, which is probably something that you've seen. So you recently launched with a few others, Tastemaker Acquisition, and that's focusing on emerging technologies in the food space. What was the impetus behind that? Is it exactly what we're talking about, or is there other things that you're seeing that are attracting you through that?
Yeah, so Tastemaker Acquisition is it's a SPAC that we formed with some operators in the space, and we are focused both on kind of the traditional kind of growth restaurant brands, but as well it gives us an avenue to look at growth restaurant technology. And yeah, I think that the impetus for having a vehicle like that, it's a SPAC. So the idea of it is we're going to merge to bring a company into the public market. So it'll be so I think the main difference between Tastemaker and Kichen Fund is it's significantly bigger. These are for companies that have will be in the kind of $1 billion size. So they're more mature businesses, but yes, I think the impetus, for us to be focused on the restaurant tech right now is we do think that the maturity of these brands is hitting kind of an inflection point right now. I mean, I think that a lot of the trends we were seeing in 2017, 18, 19 kind of like hit the rocket boosters in 2020, because a lot of this restaurant tech went from kind of a nice to have to a must have very quickly, right? There was just no way, given the fact that most guests were now interacting with brands through digital channels, you needed to have your infrastructure set up correctly. And so a lot of brands that a lot of tech companies that we thought were probably 3 years away from kind of really hitting scale, hit it in 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we saw some pretty big gaps immediately. And it's funny, I've mentioned this before elsewhere and around. I think it was 2018 or 19. I was speaking in Chicago at the Fed conference, so Food Service and Equipment magazine and Restaurant Design and Development magazine, that group. And I was speaking about like the future of restaurants. What does this look like? And I was hammering home technology, and not just the ticking of the box. Oh, I have a digital menu board, or I have a new POS system, but like the interconnectivity and the integration of all these different systems that really don't connect very well. Some of them connect decently. Like Olo's been really good about connecting with a lot of different providers, but it's still not holistic. It's still not well integrated. Little did I know that the pandemic, like you said, would flip it from a 3 to 5 year to next month need. But a lot of people were caught with their pants absolutely down. It's really hard to recover.
It's hard. I mean, it's like, as you said, like there are disparate systems that, there's kind of centers of gravity, and then a lot of nodes flying around, a lot of little planets that need to connect in, and it's hard. I mean, we use, there are businesses that are going to be very big just based on being the integrator. So, we love a business called Checkmate that takes basically all of the that literally their job in life is make sense of all of the delivery platforms with all the POS systems, which is because you can't assume that Revel or Toast or anybody else has the time to build direct integrations with the very long tail of delivery, catering, order ahead, all the platforms that a brand might use. I mean, you see what's going on in the back of restaurants. You can have 5 to 10 tablets, each with a delivery platform.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work from an operational perspective. So there's companies like that are just saying, look, our whole reason for being is to take all those 10 tablets and get them all into the POS so that it makes operations easier. And then you have on the other side, you've got businesses like Wisely that take all of the data that are coming out of these various systems and try to make sense of all the guest data for a business. So you can kind of track the, as we were talking about the customer journey and so forth. But I think those are, that type of thing they're going to be big businesses, because you have, if we look at the tech stacks at this point for any business, you may have 15 tech providers
right.
in any restaurant. And, it's actually like unreasonable to expect those tech companies to build all of the necessary integrations, because they would spend their entire dev roadmap doing that.
Yeah, it's insane. And I think that's about the right number. I don't know if you're including marketing in that too, but from our standpoint as a marketing and branding agency, I think one of the points of frustration for us is when a company has bought into a system and that system has been positioned as all-encompassing, or at least in a lot of ways. So I won't call out a specific POS, but there's a POS system or a couple out there that also do quote unquote email marketing. And so we dive into this baby and we're like, okay, yeah, technically you can send out an email through this system. You're right. But that's where it ends. You can't segment, you can't target. Well, you can target a little bit with purchase behavior, but we're talking about needing to talk to people kind of pre-purchase, or how do I put it? Like, I want to know the burrata guy, and we don't have that, and so it's really frustrating because for a client we're like, yeah, I know that this can do this, but we need more.
Technically, it integrates with Gmail, but that's about as far as it goes.
Exactly, and so it's really bumpy. And I've seen that with another system that does data gating for on-premise Wi-Fi. So I'm going to sit in my, Sweet Green. I want to connect. I'm just going to throw in my email address, collects the email address, puts it into a system. Oh, and we can do email marketing too. I dig into that system. I'm like, yes, technically you can send it an email. That is correct.
Yeah. It's, companies like that should probably just focus on the Wi-Fi part, collect the emails, then hand the emails over to somebody else to do the CRM. I think that's that's the key. And I think we see a lot of well-intentioned startups like constantly trying to build kind of like full stack products, where it's like, okay, we're going to do the order ahead and the delivery and the POS and the inventory management, the labor management, all this stuff. And it's like, then, we'll have all the data. So then we can get into marketing and real estate and all that stuff. It's like those products are, you'll never, like, there's no company in the world that can build a product that big. There's just not enough time and engineering to build that product in a way that is effective, right?
Right.
You can say you do all those things as you said, but unfortunately, that's why the tech stack is built the way it has, because you need focused companies who, live and breathe one kind of silo in the product, and then you need integrations to make it effective. But a POS company is never going to be a good marketing company, and they don't love to admit that, but it's always the case. And so whenever we look at a tech startup and somebody's like, well, won't use the name of a POS, but so and so is going to do this, and it's like that never happens. Or if they try, they're just not as good at it.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in let bakers bake the bread. In this case, you can imagine how those conversations go in the boardroom or in the brainstorm room. It's like, well, we have the data. We might as well just do emails. Oh, we can develop an email thing. Boom, email. And it's really frustrating because marketers and other leaders who are looking at data, it's like, this is barely ticking the box of baseline. And I think I harp on email because I have a love for it. It's still a very effective marketing, and people still use the word blast. And I hate that word so much. Like, I wrote a book called Stop Blasting My Mama with the effort of trying to remove that from the way we talk about email marketing. Yeah. But we've also seen it in other places. And I think one of the things that is red flagging for me right now, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it, is, well, we're stepping away from cookies. We're stepping away from that trackability, at least what we've known to be the trackability. How do you think that's going to affect the ability to be effective and look at data and connect with people in that longer tail lifespan?
I think what we're seeing is that it's going to require more buy-in from the guest. I think that's like and that's why I think apps are, so important, and building the direct communication with your guest is you need buy-in with your guest to essentially be able to track them, right? And like, you need to have that relationship where they order through you, or whether it's delivery, order ahead, or or you can see what they're clicking in your app, et cetera. But it just, to me, it's you can't be as sneaky as, like, it was a little bit of a wild west of cookies for so long.
Yeah.
And that's slowly ending now. It's ended in Europe. Now, there's just so much more respect for the privacy, and your guest needs to buy into, they're giving you data for what reason. And if you can present a value add reason for it, then they will. And it's like, I'll give you an example. Like, I love, like, Starbucks, like, hits me up with these drinks now that, like, I would never think of. And they're things that, like, are, they're drinks that they've always had. They're just, like, kind of mixing things together in different ways, where they're like, oh, well, why don't you try, an almond milk with honey, and they're in your cold brew, and they call it, they've got a new name for it or something, but it's ingredients they've always had, but they know my ordering history. And I'm like, ooh, that does sound good. Like, and I would never in a million years have ordered it, but, like, they've now got me bought in. And now I'm like, I'll take a look at that featured drink thing on their homepage, and I'm fine if they're tracking my drink orders. I'll give them the data so that they keep feeding me cool stuff like this. Yeah,
because there's the value exchange. You're getting something out of it that's interesting, intriguing, and it makes your day maybe a little bit better than it was before. So if anyone from Starbucks is listening, hear me out. It's a cappuccino with almond milk and almond flavoring, and we call it the Al Pacino.
Why is it called the Al Pacino?
Almond cappuccino. Al Pacino. Yeah, it's great. It's a win. I don't see any legal issues with it at all either.
I think there's no problem with that. Not at all. You're allowed to just name.
Yeah, willy-nilly, whatever you want.
Al Pacino is public domain at this point.
That's right. So
Al Pacino on a pasta dish recently, actually. Al Pacino, I think it was on I believe it was on I don't want to say the restaurant, because if I'm wrong, it's going to be weird. But a restaurant in Tribeca has the Al Pacino, which is a pasta on their menu right now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, afterwards.
I think when things clear up in New York and I'm allowed to get there again, we'll have to try it out. So when I look at Kichen Fund's portfolio, I see a lot of fast casuals, QSRs. The Gregory's coffee is technically a fast casual QSR, but it's the drink space more than anything else. What about full service restaurants? How do you feel about the future of full service? And I see some things that could happen. Like I could see casual dining pulling away from full service and going fast casual, true fast casual, not elevated QSR. But I also can see a reclamation of white glove service as well. What are your thoughts on this, especially considering the effects of the pandemic?
Yeah. So I think, I think from a trend perspective, obviously, the convenience has been a focus for, many years now, and there just continues to be more, the pie for kind of what was QSR and now adding fast casual, and that keeps getting bigger because just the American population is driven more by convenience and ordering and delivery and everything. And so that pie gets bigger. I think that full service has gotten smaller. However, I think that there are a lot of stories within that are important, because I think there is, we believe in experiential full service. And so experiential can mean a lot of things, but generally speaking, if we look at, as when people ask kind of like, what do you look for and what do you think the trends are that will continue? It's like convenience and experiential. Those are the two things that matter. And experiential can also be tied with convenience, but the idea of sitting down for, kind of a mediocre, restaurant experience like that, people want something really special at this point, and it can be fun, it can be entertaining, it can be fine dining. And so I think that there's still plenty of room in those markets, and we haven't seen that much, kind of innovation, particularly in casual dining. And we talked about one of my partners at Tastemaker Acquisition is Andy Forsheimer, who started Bar Taco in Barcelona, which have really focused on kind of the next wave of what does kind of full service look like in the future. But there aren't a lot of those out there in terms of bigger chains that have kind of been trying to reinvent that casual dining experience or full service experience more generally. We think there's plenty of room there. We're involved with a sushi concept called Bamboo Sushi up in Oregon and Colorado and California, and it's full service and it's sushi, but it feels like a special experience. And they think about the occasions and why do you go there, and how does it feel comfortable for a date night or for I think it kind of works. We use the term party sushi, I think, or a work drink or whatever it may be, but giving really elevated experience at a price that works. They also have a really important sustainability story. But people run to that kind of thing. They flock to stories, kind of like we've talked about branding just generally, and is if you can have a good authenticity and reason for being, then people will still go to full service, and so we're buyers there of the right concepts.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I think I spoke with someone else recently where we were talking about it. It's the service is what people are buying, and the word good service, it can't be the beginning and the end of that conversation. It has to be tailored service. What are you delivering? And I think his name was Chip Close. He's on another episode. Sorry, it was Tom Dufour, not Chip. Chip's a different person. So Tom and I were talking, and it's working backwards. I think it was the smartest way I heard him say it, which is how do we want the person to leave? Like, how should they feel? Should they feel that I have a buddy now with my server, or should they feel doted upon? And I think those are questions that have to be asked, not just from operations, but the collective leadership of marketing, operations, and executive leadership to figure that out. And we went through that with eegees a bit too. Like, how do we want to say goodbye to the guest? And, we landed on take it easy because we thought it was a great way to do it. But that was a conversation between ops and leadership and us as well.
It's so interesting. And I think like even just on that goodbye, particularly in full service, is something we've been thinking about is like, what's so awkward about the goodbye in full service is what's the last thing you do? You pay. And like, that is a really not an awesome way to say goodbye, right? Like you've had,
right.
Had this wonderful experience. Like you've had great food and drinks and conversation, and the service has been fantastic. The last thing you do is you remember like, here's your big fat bill.
Right.
It's something that like, I think will change. I don't know how. And I think we're thinking a lot about how, but like that goodbye is really important. And you don't really love the idea of the last thing you do to be the expensive part. And so, it's just kind of similar to, a lot of other types of in-person events, which is like, it'd be really weird if you bought your concert ticket on the way out of the concert. Right, like if you pay for the concert and then like they charge you on the way out, and you're like, this is kind of an annoying way to say goodbye. So I think restaurants really need to like, it's obviously not apples to apples because you don't know how much you're buying until the end. But I think that we need to think about different service models where you can leave the guest feeling kind of like the happiest part when they walk out, not the sour bill part.
Yeah, maybe we need to get some grandma consultants to tell us how to say goodbye, like stand in the window and wave, or on the front lawn and blow kisses.
I think after the pandemic, everybody's going to be like, we'll just have somebody out there. Once everybody's vaccinated, we can have just hugs on the way out.
I would definitely go to that nice restaurant.
Hugs on the way out.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be careful. Some people who may be emotionally vulnerable could break down into some tears, but Hey, that's still good.
Part of the service.
That's right. That's right. We're also therapists.
Yeah, totally.
So while I have you, I think it would be great for some of our listeners to just hear a little tidbit of wisdom from Greg. What's one piece of advice for successfully pitching an unproven concept to a venture capitalist or an angel investor? We could say that.
I think, we talked a little bit about the reason for being. I think that's like one that we really focus on, is like kind of what differentiates, your concept from the countless others that are out there. But I think it's an industry that really requires humility too, where you need to understand that we are in the restaurant business, we're in the service business, and acting like it's thinking about it as a technology company that has a TAM or something like that is very, for those of us who stare at the P&Ls all day, like it's kind of like you don't understand the business if you're going to try to pitch that way. And so I think understanding, and this comes back, we get into the financials for a long time, but I think it's an execution driven business. And so you need to understand kind of who your guest is. And I think that part, I'll stop on that for a second, because I think that may be the best thing I can tell people is understand who your guest is. And I think very few brands know that.
It's not people with a mouth.
It's right. Exactly. And then like, you don't know how many times people will say, it's everybody, right? Like we see 20-year-olds and we see 60-year-olds and we see vegans and non-vegans. And like, that's not a helpful answer, because it can't be everybody. I mean,
Right.
If you look at stats, and I think this is, so interesting. If you look at kind of the data behind it, generally speaking, you're going to find out that I'm just going to make up a number, but like the top 5% of your guests are going to represent 25% of your revenue. And
Right.
You need to understand who that guest is, and you need to explain that to me as as an investor. If you don't have that level of knowledge, it's going to be everything else, because then we talk about what else are we going to look for? We're going to look for the return on invested capital. We're going to look on, the how many units, how many markets will this fit in, all of those things. But it all starts at who is your guest, and very explicitly, and who's your guest and why do they love you? And if you can nail those two things, then your pitch is going to be very compelling.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, the way we talk about it and the way we consult with our clients is we talk about the profile layer, which is the thing that everybody knows. If you've taken a marketing 101 class, you know that there's demographic and yada, yada. But we also look for not just who that person is on an income and maybe objective is the right word layer, but who do they aspire to be, or how do they aspire to feel? And so one of the things that we uncovered, just using eegees again, was, we have people from all over the spectrum, but our core is young people who want to be a little bit older than they are. And we have people who are entering into parenthood who still want to feel like they got it. They still want to feel a little bit young. And so those two groups, although different with different realities, have a similar overlap. And that's how we came up with the patron focus of sun chasers, meaning fun. Like they want to have that vibrant moment. It's not just sustenance. And, and then they want to bring the kids there too, because it's family friendly. But I think finding that's the value, is the connectivity of their aspirational, we call it a perceptual layer. How do they want the world to see them? What are their values and optics? And then how does the brand deliver on that? What does Gregory's coffee say about Joseph when he's holding that cup and someone sees it?
I love that. I was talking to a few years ago. I was talking to the former CMO of Coca-Cola, and he just like in a lunch just rattled off a bunch of like, here are the 10 things you need. And it was like, I was like, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna take out a notebook for this. But the one that stuck with me, and is exactly what you're talking about, which is you want people to feel like their best selves. Like you want to make them feel that way. And each brand can do that in a different way, because, Gregory's coffee is like, Gregory's coffee, if you look at a lot of their collateral, is, about the hustle. Like it's, our customer is, a lot of our customer is Midtown Manhattan, and it's about the grind. So you want to feel like you're energized, you're healthy, you're ready to like go work. And so there's a lot of that go branding associated with it. Whereas we're involved with a great Indian health brand called Inde in New York that they focus a lot on kind of ancient Indian health principles, and so that is a very purpose driven. You want to feel good from kind of a mind body alignment perspective, and so you need to have the messaging to understand this is what this food will do for you from a kind of a health perspective, and like that. So I think what you're saying is exactly right, but each brand can achieve it in another way. And eegee is a perfect one for vibrancy. It's exciting. You want to you come out and you feel like, and I love obviously the work that you've done on it is like, it's so vibrant and like it's like a day at the beach almost, even though it's in Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah. Got the sand.
But the sand is there, but it's like that like summer, summer all time, any time of year kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So I think you need to, as you said, like you can't be if you're a donut company, you can't be a health brand. So what is it about your brand? What do customers love about you? They want comfort, they want sweetness, they want, whatever it is, like understand that and then lean in heavily to it. And that's going to help you on all phases of growth, because it's not just the marketing, the branding, but it's like the real estate decisions, because you need to figure out where your guest is. You need to figure out, how many should you have, how many in a market, how many in a neighborhood, how far are people willing to travel for you. All of those elements are critical they're all driven based on who is your guest.
Right. Yeah. And I think if I may be so bold, I think when you mentioned authenticity early on, when in this interview or this discussion, that might be what I think you're kind of talking about, because it is hard to define, but it's that, does this deliver authentically on that level?
Yeah.
Is it something that I'm connecting with? Is it something that aligns with their promises? So if they're promising you the world, they need to deliver the world, or they'll be unhappy.
Completely. That authentic. I mean, that's exactly right. And I mean, I use this as a interesting thinking piece, but whether or not the authenticity. I mean, you see who founds these companies, and they're always passion driven people, but there aren't a lot of examples of people founding a second successful restaurant business, especially in chain world, maybe on independent restaurants, but if you think about the founders of chains, they don't typically go on to do it again in a successful manner. And I think it's, at a certain point, that DNA and that passion is, hard to muster up once you've been so successful. And so,
that what it takes attitude. I mean, it's really hard to work every night, all night for 5 years to get that baby on its feet. I don't blame them. Probably looking for something easier. Well, Greg, this has been great. How can people get in touch with you? Where can they connect with Kichen Fund?
Yeah, we've got all our contact information and on kitchenfund.com, Tastemakeracquisition.com, or Tastemaker ACQ, which is the short one, but everybody knows how to Google at this point. And definitely reach out. I think a lot of our best ideas are completely cold relationships. So we're very happy to talk to anybody, and it's it's a small knit community. So we're here to help if we can just offer some advice to people along the way, even if we're not involved.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much for your time and all your insights. I really appreciate it.
All right, my friend. Good to see you.
Cheers.
Bye.
If you love what we served up, please follow us at Vigor Branding on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Medium. Forktales is produced by the team at Vigor. Audio and video post-productions provided by Zencaster. Music performed by Jet Trash and licensed through musicbed.com. Joseph handles his own hair, makeup, and stunts. Copyright 2003 to 2021, Vigor Graphic Design LLC, all rights reserved.